I'm Andrew, and I'm setting out to make better videos for diesel enthusiasts. Follow along as I review products, do how-tos, and share my personal trucks here on Just Diesels. If you own or have driven a second gen, you know how bad the steering feel on those trucks is. They wander all over the place, tons of play in the wheel, not very fun to drive. And the reason for that, or at least a big reason for that, is the track bar. So today we're going to be installing the Thuren second gen track bar on my truck. I'm going to be doing a review of it. I'm going to kind of explain to you guys why track bars are so important on this particular platform. So before we get started on the install, let's talk a little bit about track bars just in general. And this is for people that aren't super familiar with what a track bar is. So basically the track bar is a really important piece of the steering and front suspension on any solid axle vehicle. The track bar is basically the only link that is keeping the axles from shifting perpendicular to the truck, right? So if you're driving in a straight line, slam on the brakes and make a sharp right-hand turn, the only thing stopping the axle from shifting under the truck or moving perpendicularly is the track bar, and that's connecting from the frame down to the axle. So it's controlling the path of the suspension, but because it's stopping axle shift, it's playing a really important role in steering feel. So if your track bar bushings are worn out, you'll often feel kind of a shifting, swaying feeling in the truck where like you turn left and the truck keeps going straight, that type of thing. And that is exactly the problem with second gens. So if you've ever driven one of these second gens, I'm sure you understand the joke that people always make online. These things are impossible to drive. They always have wandering steering. So like, if you look at me now, here I am steering this truck. This is literally how much play I have in the steering, and it's doing nothing. I'm still driving straight. If there's any kind of like crown in the road, if there's any kind of like construction area where there's those like different rises and channels, the truck's just pulling all over the place. All it wants to do is follow the road. And the reason for that is the track bar. So a lot of people will try and put steering box braces on these trucks. They'll try and put all kinds of stuff on, and they're not going after the heart of the problem, and that's the track bar. And until now, there hasn't really been some great solutions. So you can replace the factory track bar, that's fine, but the issue is the factory track bar. So it's just a really bad design in the track bar. If you do a better track bar, like the Thuren that we're gonna do, DT ProFab also makes one, those track bars actually change the mounting geometry of the track bar, and I'll explain more in a second, but that is what's gonna clean up this play and slop in the steering. And if I let go of the truck, it'll drive relatively straight until there's anything that'll pull it in a direction, but if you have trouble with basically the truck pulling under braking, all that stuff, what's happening is axle shift, and that axle shift is because of play in the track bar. Now the stock track bar is a lot of the reason for that. So on the axle side, you have a big rubber bushing, so already there's a lot of deflection possibility in there, and then wear it out over time, huge deflection possibility. And on the frame side, you have a really weird joint that Chrysler designed. It's basically almost like a ball joint style joint. And if you think about what a track bar is doing, it has to stop perpendicular movement. So if you have a joint that's kind of able to perpendicularly move as it wears out, again, you got a huge source of play. So that joint is highly flawed. The other issue is that the bracket actually moves a lot on the frame of these trucks. So you'll see people trying to do steering box braces and all this stuff, but that bracket on the frame is another source of play, especially since it's an open C-channel frame. So those are the flaws of the track bar. And today we're going to be kind of addressing that with the Thuren track bar. Now really quickly, I want to talk something about the year applications for this track bar because there's something interesting to note. So this track bar works on all second gens from 94 to 2001. There's one catch to that though. If you have a truck with Cobra style sway bar mounts on the axle, those are the ones, I'll show a picture of it right now, but basically it's a Cobra almost looking mount. If you have that and you have an inverted sway bar with longer sway bar end links, this is something that's required if you have any kind of longer travel coils, lift kits, things like that. This track bar will not work. The factory sway bar, if inverted, will hit this bracket. So if you have that set up, you must run the DT ProFab track bar. That is pretty much the next best option for these trucks. Now, if you want to run this track bar and you have one of those trucks, the easiest thing to do is to go to a wrecking yard, basically cut off the sway bar mounts from a truck that is from basically 2000 to 2002, or really 98 and a half, 99 to 2002. If you can cut off the sway bar mounts, you can weld those on there, and then you can either run the later style sway bar or you can run the Thuren full replacement sway bar, which is what my truck has. So my truck is a 99 with the Thuren full replacement sway bar. I have no issues with contact, but if I had a 94 to 98 with the inverted sway bar, I would have to run the DT Profab 2nd Gen track bar. So if you're not familiar with Thuren, Thuren is a company that makes high-end suspension for the Dodge Ram platform. They make from 2nd Gen all the way to current trucks. And this track bar is a really cool piece because for a long time, there hasn't been a great option for 2nd Gen track bars. Now what the Thuren track bar is an actually dedicated track bar specific to the 2nd Gen platform. So you'll see a lot of brackets out there, you probably read about them, that convert 3rd Gen track bars to run on the 2nd Gen platform. But if you look at the Thuren 2nd Gen track bar and this 3rd Gen track bar right next to each other, you notice that the geometry is actually very different. The bend is in a different place and all that stuff. And so what you're doing with putting a 3rd Gen bar on there is kind of stuffing something in that's not meant to be there. So if you want to have proper geometry, proper steering angles, all that stuff, that is where a specific track bar to the platform is going to definitely be an advantage. So Thuren not only designed a specific track bar, but they also designed a whole new frame side bracket. And what this frame side bracket is doing is converting the mounting point on the frame. Instead of being like a ball joint style, it's going to be a traditional through bolt style in the direction of the track bar angle. A much better, much stiffer design. This is exactly what you're going to see on 3rd, 4th, and 5th Gen 2500, 3500 heavy duty trucks. Now let's talk a little bit about the joint specifically that Thuren is using. So on the axle side, this is going to be using a Heim style joint. You will have to drill out the hole on the axle to be slightly larger to allow for a larger bolt. And the reason for this is you got a larger diameter bolt, more clamping area, more surface area, and that joint can be a larger surface area. So that is the only drilling that this track bar requires, but it is well worth it to improve the steering feel because you're moving to a larger bolt diameter. On the frame side, they're going to be using their Delrin joint. Now, this is a polymer joint. It is basically an extremely high density, almost plastic-like polymer. I would love to see a different joint be used, but as far as this goes, this is going to be pretty much the nicest track bar that's ever been applied to the 2nd Gen platform, so I'll take it. The Delrin joints are cheap, they're easy to replace, and while I would prefer probably a spherical style joint, this is a really solid option. Now, a bunch of you guys have reached out to me on Instagram asking why I haven't made this video, because a lot of you guys saw me put this track bar on my truck. And the whole reason is that I wanted to get used to how the track bar felt on the truck, give you guys some real information and actually have some miles on this track bar. I wanted to make sure there weren't any creaks, you know, groans, interference with the bracket into different things, all of that stuff. So that is why I waited so long to do this video, because I wanted to actually give a legitimate review that was something worthwhile, you know, not something where like I put it on 5 minutes ago and let's go drive the truck. So these are my thoughts after actually spending some time in it, but let's go take the truck for a drive and I'll show you what it feels like on the road. Way less play in the steering. Still a little bit of play, like it's got just a touch, but typical 2nd Gen. The one thing that's really important is like I don't have the pull under braking. So I used to, when I would brake the truck, it would pull, it would follow any kind of rut, and that was exactly what happens when you have a track bar that is worn out. It's allowing the axle to shift under the truck. So especially if I was like braking and lane changing at the same time. So like if I lane change right now and hit the brakes, the truck tracks totally straight. If I had done that before, the truck would have pulled over to the side. So anytime that you have axle shift, that's when you're gonna have that input in your steering, and this completely eliminated that. So really stoked. Install, pretty easy to do. And driving, the proof is in the pudding. This is so much better than the factory track bar. It's literally like night and day. It's like a new truck. So after having this track bar on my truck for a few thousand miles, I gotta say I am very impressed. It dramatically changed the way this truck feels and drives. Even low speed parking lot driving, I actually noticed a difference. If I turn the wheel, it is so much more direct than it used to be with the old track bar. You don't really appreciate that until you get to do it before and after, but it's a dramatic change, and that's probably the place where I noticed it the most, aside from just cruising down the highway, not having such a huge dead spot. And it's still 2nd Gen, it's still a little bit of dead spot, and I know that that's from the steering box on my truck. I haven't wanted to change that yet, just because, I don't know, it's such a nice, perfect truck, but I know that at this point, there's no play in the steering linkage, there's no play in the ball joints, there's no play in the track bar, so that's my last final thing to go after, but it is dramatically, dramatically better. And that's what's so cool about this track bar, is that no one's ever put this kind of effort into a 2nd Gen track bar. The bracket, the bar itself, everything about it is super well designed. You're basically taking modern 2022 technology into applying it to a truck from 94 to 99. And that's not something that's ever happened before. And so it's so cool to see. So I gotta say, this track bar is an awesome, awesome option for people that wanna improve their 2nd Gen and do it the right way. This track bar is not cheap. There's definitely a whole lot of cheaper track bars on the market, but if you want to do it right, you're going to have to pay for it. And this is definitely a worth it setup. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is not applicable for trucks that have the Cobra style sway bar with longer end links, but if you have a truck like mine where you're either the 99 plus, etc., where you don't have that issue, this is an awesome bolt-in option. It just fits super well. Everything works really well. The install took like 30 minutes if I wasn't filming. So hopefully that helps you guys decide on a track bar for your second gen. And yeah, I'm really happy with this. It was well worth the money. This is a solid upgrade for your truck. So if anything else you guys want to see, let me know. Comment down below if there's something else you want to see reviewed on this truck or in general. But thank you guys for watching, and catch you in the next video. Oh, and by the way, if you're interested in getting this track bar, I got links down below. Shout out to the guys at TJC Off-Road for always being awesome and supporting. But that is where I'd recommend getting this track bar. So thank you guys so much, and I will catch you guys on the next video.